So big data is here. It's like actually impacting a lot of businesses. People are doing all kinds of auto magical stuff on Netflix or Pandora to tell you what you like. And if you could take another data set and correlate it to the million people that you have or so, like say a blood test or I'm not sure what, or everybody wears a wearable for 100 days, and you had a complete data set of 100 days and, I don't know, a blood test, what would you be able to tell us, or what would the research be able to tell us? And has anybody done anything remotely close to matching those kind of data sets? The activity that...
Data set would that be?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Yeah, it's, I mean, we debate this quite a bit, in part because also there's so much data that's coming in and what's the right data. In some ways you kind of want all of it. Blood data, I would say to start with, blood data is probably the most valuable because you want to potentially be able to correlate trends in your standard lab values with potentially an early diagnosis for something. The activity data, you don't necessarily need all of the data that is coming, but you potentially need certain kinds of data points or the deltas, the changes that are happening. There's all kinds of things that are going to be interesting that people don't realize. So for instance, we had a talk yesterday in the office about Parkinson's disease, and people who have REM sleep disorders or like who have problems sleeping, it's a predictor for Parkinson's. And sort of uniformly, like these people end up having a problem. And apparently the sleep doctors always knew this, but it never translated over to the neurologists. And there's things like that. And people with Parkinson's as well, they start to lose their sense of smell. So there's things that are going to be really interesting to be able to detect. What I think about always from our research angle is what is it that the consumers want? And ideally, like we're all in the room, everyone's relatively young in here, you want to know how to prevent disease. And so there's two things to me that are interesting in prevention. Is one is the things that you do day in and day out is you eat and you breathe your environment. And so I'm super interested in what is it that you're eating and how does it actually potentially really influence and any kind of environmental exposures. So like Environmental Working Group does a bunch of interesting studies on like what truly is the harm of Teflon in your food. And, like I would love to do, like I did a body burden study 8 years ago where I was really high in fire retardants. And it was a thing.
Fire retardants. And they joked, they're like, oh, you must fly a lot in coach. And I said, yes, because I was from the Wall Street days. Like, you fly all the time. Like, if you think about it, airplanes are covered in fire retardants and you're breathing circulated air. So you're absorbing a lot of fire retardants. So I think that it's just kind of interesting to study those components because what the consumer ultimately is going to want is like, you want to stay healthy. And if I can give you that guide for staying healthy. So it's a little bit of a long answer. I mean, I do think that the blood data and medical records are going to be sort of first priority list for us. But then figuring out a way that you can really track environment and, GPS from your phones that matches with pollution statistics from the country and sort of your gross, how much are you actually exercising every day on a relative basis to peers, like that information is going to be super valuable.